Hey, everybody, welcome to the rooftop, another episode of our podcast. And this is a really special one. You know, from time to time, we have some really special guests, guests that are able to come on the show and talk about and offer perspective on a range of national and international issues. And today is certainly no exception. You all know where I stand on Afghanistan and our relationship with them over the years and how I feel about the abandonment that happened. And I know many of you listening and watching feel the same way. And I made a commitment when all of this happened that I would never miss an opportunity to give a voice to true Afghan leadership when the opportunity presents itself, particularly when those voices could be heard much more than what they are, and they need to be heard more. So in this election year of 2024, I thought it was extremely appropriate that we invite from the Embassy and Permanent Mission of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in Vienna, Austria, Madam Ambassador H.E. Manizha Bakhri. Gave it a good run there, Ambassador. I'll keep practicing. But she is a diplomat, a lecturer, and author. She was formerly Afghanistan's ambassador to Nordic countries 2009 to 2015, and she served as the chief of staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kabul from 2007 to 2009. A couple other things about the ambassador. Prior to her diplomatic career, she was renowned for her work on gender advocacy in the nonprofit sector, and we're going to talk about that some today, namely with the Cooperation Center for Afghanistan during her time there. And she traveled across Afghanistan, aiming to implement global gender equality standards and raise awareness. She received her bachelor's degree in journalism from Kabul University and her master's degree from the university's Persian literature department. And she also served as a lecturer at her alma mater. She's published hundreds of academic and journalistic articles, as well as 7 academic books. That is a lot, Madam Ambassador. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being on the Rooftop Podcast.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. Indeed, it's a pleasure to talk to you and to your audience.
Thank you. And let's just get right into it. I would love to, and I know my audience would love to just learn a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, and just your backstory and growing up and how you came to be in the positions that I just read about and where you are today?
Where I can start about myself, I was born in Kabul city, the capital of Afghanistan, and my family was and is an open-minded family. My father is a well-known person in Afghanistan, and many people know him and respect him. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. I have 2 sisters, and we didn't have a brother, and that made a little bit our life difficult in Kabul city, where in Afghanistan, where was like a patriarchal order was unset. But anyway, I had the opportunity to study and complete my education. For some time, I was a lecturer at Kabul University, and at the same time holding a part-time position with one of Afghanistan's NGOs that you already called the Cooperation Center for Afghanistan. And actually, I have got a lot of knowledge there and with that NGO in terms of women's rights, human rights, and gender balance. And through the time, I became the chief of gender section at that organization. And I joined the Foreign Service in 2007. And after that, I had 2 diplomatic tenure, one in Norway, as you mentioned, and right now I'm serving as Afghanistan's ambassador to Austria. And throughout my career, I have authored actually 10 different books. And just recently, I published my one of my novels.
Wow.
And the same time, I have been advocating for the rights of women in Afghanistan. That subject has always been a cause dear to my heart. And it's worth mentioning that in 2016, I decided to resign from the Foreign Service. However, in 2020, the then foreign minister called me back to serve, and I accepted the opportunity. As of January 2021, I assumed the role of ambassador in Vienna.
Wonderful. And I guess the first question that I want to ask, because I think a lot of our audience members will be surprised that there are some very unique things about the post that you hold right now. Um, you know, the role of ambassador from the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan has certainly altered since the initial collapse in 2021. Tell us a little bit about your post in Austria and what makes it unique.
The responsibilities of an Afghan ambassador were not, significantly different from those of other diplomats before the recent political change and takeover. However, for the Afghan ambassadors right now who do not support the Taliban, the task have undergone a substantial transformation, as you know, and despite this, it has impacted our daily routine, though not to the extent that to prevent us from fulfilling certain aspects of our duties. Anyway, of course, after the Afghanistan's collapse and Taliban's takeover, my role has been changed, and right now, so I would say that my role involves representing Afghanistan in conferences and meetings at the UN office in Vienna, at the OEC, the Organization of Security and Cooperation of Europe, and actually I'm very active at the OEC, and also maintaining bilateral relations with Austria, participating in events organized by civil society and the Austrian parliament, and at the same time fostering connections with individuals there. In particular, I have transferred my mission into a hub and a platform for raising awareness and advocating for women's rights in Afghanistan. And this additional focus aligns with the broader goal of promoting gender equality, which has always been a goal for me, and also addressing the challenges faced by women in my country. And and naturally, part of my responsibilities also include effectively managing my office. A while ago, I had a meeting with the Austrian Parliament, and there I told them that it might look like a joke that when I started my job as Afghanistan's ambassadors, I was fostering and promoting bilateral relations. And after the collapse, I tried to convince everyone not to connect with the Taliban and not to recognize the Taliban.
Right.
So
Right.
right now, I would say that the uniqueness of my current position lies in my role as a lobbyist against the de facto authority in the country. And I don't know whether that happened before in the history of diplomacy or not, but that's what I'm doing right now. And despite the challenges posed by the changed political landscape, I'm actively engaged in advocating of causes that align with my objectives. And specifically, my focus on lobbying against the de facto authority adds a distinct dimension to my responsibilities as an ambassador. And I'm emphasizing my commitment to principles such as human rights, inclusivity, and promotions of women's rights in Afghanistan, because that is right now, actually, that is the very main thing for me to advocate and to lobby for women's rights in Afghanistan.
Yes, and I just appreciate so much you clarifying this for us. And you're very humble, but when you say that it's probably never been done in history, I think you're probably right. I mean, I think the fact that you are standing up against the Taliban and asking other countries not to support them, and doing that from a minister, from a mission post, I just think is unbelievable and extremely brave. And I know it can't be easy. But I also understand fully that a lot of this has to do with your passion for gender equality and the things that need to be addressed there. Can you talk a little bit about where things were going with your work in, for example, gender equality before the collapse, and then contrast them to where they are now in Afghanistan in a post-Taliban takeover for particularly for women?
You see that you can see like a severe contrast between Afghanistan's yesterday and Afghanistan's today, and it indicates a significant deterioration in women's rights in Afghanistan following the Taliban's takeover. I'm not saying that before the Taliban everything was perfect and we had a garden of flowers and we had butter and milk and everything was all right, but at least we were on the right path and we were struggling to find our ways to promote gender equality in Afghanistan. Anyway, the situation right now suggests that women are facing severe restrictions, including being deprived of education. And actually, Afghanistan is the only country who officially bans their half of population from from formal studies. Our women have lost their jobs and being banned from public spaces like parks and sport clubs and other public places. And the fact that families with female breadwinners are particularly affected, and that highlights the broader economic impact of these restrictions. You can just imagine like a family with a female leader who do not have a male member in their family. So how they can survive, what they should do. And well, if the Taliban do not allow women to work, so what is the solution for those families? There is no solution for that. We do not have a welfare system that they provide them with some cash or with some other living materials. So there is no solution for that. And you see that after the Taliban takeover, actually they have issued more than 50 decrees that systematically limit women's participation in society, and that further underscores the extent of the restrictions and the the enforcement of the risk codes, such as the requirement for hijab, leading to the arrest of women who do not comply, and that adds to the concerns about personal freedoms and individual rights. And just now we are witnessing hundreds of reports about the arrest of women and young girls on the streets of Kabul for not having the proper hijab. And as I see those short clips in the social media, I see that they have proper clothing. They have all covered with a black kind of tent or hijab or whatsoever, and still they take them to the prisons and they detain them, they prosecute them, and they beat them, and that is something intolerable. As per one report, you see that there are around 800 women and young girls in their prisons. And describing the situation as a form of gender-based persecution and gender apartheid emphasizes the severity of the challenges that women in Afghanistan currently face. I need to label that as gender apartheid because it's important to have a definition for the atrocities that the Taliban are implementing in Afghanistan. If we do not label that, and if we do not have a name and a description and definition, then how we can hold the Taliban accountable? And it's essential to stay informed about the evolving situation and monitor international responses to address the human rights violations in Afghanistan, because that is one of that severe kind of human rights and women's rights violation in all the earth.
Yes, I first of all, agree with you, and then I appreciate you framing the problem as gender apartheid, and I give you my word that we will use that language as well going forward on our platforms and everything that we can do to demand accountability and action on this. But I guess one of the things I'm confused about, I just don't understand, and maybe you can help me with it. But there, you would think that something as significant as that, as atrocious as that, that there would be a much greater public outcry from the international community around gender apartheid. But yet it seems to me that, I don't know if it's because it's Afghanistan or because maybe some people don't want to be involved after 20 years of fighting there. I don't know. But it just seems to me that as horrific as this is, there are very few people talking about it in the international community, in the gender advocacy space. And I don't understand it. Do you have, I mean, am I right? And if so, what do we do about that?
You're very right. Throughout my work in the past 2 years, I have seen so many conferences and seminars that they are talking about gender balance, about human rights, women rights, and they do not even mention once Afghanistan. And I'm there, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what is going on in this world? I mean, like, that is abuse that the people of Afghanistan currently lack the leverage to voice their requests and wishes effectively. You know, like, we do not have that leverage now. But despite this, I urge not to abandon Afghanistan that way. And you see, that is very significant. Allow me to share a personal story that highlights the challenges faced by Afghan girls right now. A friend's daughter in Afghanistan, whom I have the privilege to know, only 12 years old, and she's in grade 6, and she was an excellent student. However, this year she deliberately failed when her parents questioned her about the unexpected result, because she always been #1 in her school. She explained that she wanted to continue attending the school for another year, and she deliberately failing because she want to stay, she want to go for another year to school, because you know in Afghanistan girls cannot go after grade 6. So that is why she tried to be a failure, only to go for another year to school. And this narrative underscores again the length of which young Afghan girls are willing to go for the chance of education amid uncertain circumstances. And you just noticed one important thing: Afghanistan fatigue. And actually that Afghanistan fatigue created an environment or circumstances that some nations and some countries, they are just like, oh, well, we have been in Afghanistan for 20 years. We paid the ultimum prices. We spend millions of dollars. And right now, what is the cost to go back to Afghanistan? And there is no appetite to go back to Afghanistan. And of course, I understand that. And we do not urge any nation to come back to Afghanistan. However, I believe that that's a shared responsibility to tackle and to address gender apartheid and gender persecution in Afghanistan, because it is not something related only to Afghanistan. Women's issue is women issues in all over the world. And one cannot talk about human rights declaration not applying that to Afghanistan, because we should consider the universality of human rights declaration, and that applies everywhere. Unfortunately, that is the situation, and that's why not only myself, but a big group of women and young girls are working, whether they are in Afghanistan or they are out of Afghanistan, to raise this awareness and to tell and to emphasize that we need to collectively address this issue in Afghanistan.
Extremely well said. The only thing I would add to what you just said is, you know, when we left Afghanistan the way that we did, we being NATO and the United States, I had been retired for a while, but I will tell you, it was like a punch, and it was like a punch in the gut. It was like someone kicking you in the stomach, because you know, for many of us, we spent a lot of years there, and we built a lot of friendships there, and we bled there, and we lost a lot of our friends there. Many of them were Afghans, but many of them were our brothers too. And one of the things that I've heard over and over again, Madam Ambassador, and I think you should know this, is that when I talk to my friends who are very, very distraught, veterans, over the way that we left and over the way that this went, one of the things that they always say is, one of the things I'm most proud of is that we held space as best we could so that girls could go to school, and that things could start to change over there, and that may not, I don't know, that may or may not surprise you, but I will tell you that is a comment I hear a lot from veterans across the country, who they take a lot of pride, and they have a lot of love for the work that you and others have done to bravely, advance gender equality, and they see how painful it is to have gone backwards. And I just want you to know that there are a lot of us in the veteran community who not only support what you're saying, but feel very strongly that this is a joint responsibility. There is a universality to it, and we have a moral obligation to, because we fought for that moral obligation. We experienced it, and we're proud of it. We're proud of what was advanced and moved forward. And like you said, it was far from perfect, and we created a lot of problems too, while we were there, and that's the truth. But one of the things that I do take a lot of pride in is that there was a true effort to do the kind of things that you've done. And I wonder what it will take to wake people up to this reality, because this is a very dark thing if we don't address it.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with you. That I'm so happy to hear this, that there are people thinking about Afghan people and about the suffering of our women, and that is a joint responsibility. That really makes my heart warm. And I also expressed my disappointment regarding the way the United States left Afghanistan and the way US conducted the so-called peace talks and agreements with the Taliban. And actually, I believe that peace deal was one of the contributors of the Taliban's takeover. I'm not denying or the fact that the United States and other international friends in Afghanistan have made a significant change and transformation in the country. And of course, you made the space for millions of girls to go to school, for thousands of women to have high-level jobs in the government and non-governmental organizations. And I always appreciate that efforts, but at the same time, let me show my disappointment as well, because that was our collective achievements, and we shouldn't have lost all those joint achievements. We should have kept all that together. And unfortunately, everything was ruined like a house of cards, and that's very disappointing, very disappointing. But what can we do? I mean, I already said about Afghanistan fatigue, but I want to warn against that Afghanistan fatigue, emphasizing that fatigue potentially could affect or impact the region and the world. Because if right now you do not have the appetite to address Afghanistan's issues, that issue might be bigger and bigger, and that impacts the region and all the world. And another thing, I don't know whether it's, I actually am forgotten what was your question, but let me just add another concern, another big concern that I have, and that concern extends to the Taliban's actions in replacing schools with madrasas. So I read a report from Afghanistan's media that since the Taliban takeover, they have built 7,000 new madrasas in the country, and we do not need those madrasas. Afghanistan has been an Islamic country, and all the families, they teach their children how to be a Muslim and how to read Quran, how to do prayings, and we do not need that extent of number of schools in Afghanistan. And not only that, they have altered the curriculum data, and that potentially fostering extremism in the young generation. And now I feel that the young generation of Afghanistan are leaning towards Talibanism and towards extremism, and that points this points to broader consequences that may result from such shifts in education policy. And my plea is for attention and collective actions to prevent these outcomes on a global scale. What if we have millions of extremists in Afghanistan in the next 10 years? And that is something very important, and we should address that today, not tomorrow, just today.
Yes, it's so well said. And there's several things that you say here that I want to kind of unpack a little bit. And, one of the things is, I think you and I both share a very high level of disappointment in the US and to some degree NATO's policy to depart and the way they departed. I also share with you the disappointment in the Doha Agreement and the way that was done. It was to me, it's so obvious that when you make an agreement like that and you exclude the Afghan government, there's only one way that can end, and it ended exactly the way it would. And I actually testified to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, to the full committee, and I'll ask Legend to share that testimony with you. But I said many of the things that you're saying to our Congress as a veteran, that the policy decisions were atrocious. They were terrible. And they not only were they just bad decisions, but they do have a regional and global implication, multiple implications, not just, and I'm not diminishing gender apartheid, it is terrible. But as you alluded to, what brought America to Afghanistan in the first place was the manifestation of violent extremism on 9/11/2001 that emanated from terror safe havens in the rural areas of Afghanistan, that emanated from madrasas along the border. And I think you're right. I think that this does potentially offer a new level of extremism that's going to find its way into the West. And I guess maybe I would ask you to talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing or hearing about the emergence of violent extremism inside Afghanistan, and what would you tell people in the West that they should be paying attention to?
Let me start from this point that in a diplomatic area of Kabul city, Ayman al-Zawahiri, sure that you know him, was discovered and killed only a few months after the Taliban assumed control, right? And that's a fact. I'm not making that. Right. So what that tells us, just a few months after the Taliban's takeover, they found Ayman al-Zawahiri, the head of Al-Qaeda in Kabul city, in a very safe diplomatic area. So that is a signal. That is a warning to the world. And, this development raises concerns about the Taliban hosting international terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda Tariq Islami of Uzbekistan, the Tajikistan Ansarullah, TTP, and many more. And well, I do not have access to very accurate media reports, as you know, because we do not have free media right now in Afghanistan, and the media has been controlled by the Taliban for the past 2 years. But still here, there, we listen to some reports, we read some reports that says that especially in the north part of Afghanistan, international terrorists are based, and they are trying to attack Central Asian countries, and there have been some incidents as well, and as well in the border with the Pakistan, and they are supporting the Tehreek Taliban in Pakistan, and they have that ties with that, and actually that shows us that the Taliban didn't meet their commitments, what they have said in Doha Agreement, although I'm against that Doha Agreement, but at least they should have met some of their commitments there, but they don't. So I see that Afghanistan is right now is potentially a safe place, a safe haven for international terrorists. And not only that, they are trying to raise and train the next generation of extremists in Afghanistan. And that it's like, you know, like it's like when someone raises a what is called like a strange exotic animal, and then that animal turns and eats its creator. So you have seen that in many movies, many Hollywood movies. And I see that that might happen in Afghanistan as well. Right now, many of our neighbors are having close contacts and cooperation with the Taliban, but that extremists will come to their lands as well one day, because right now they are working with a terrorist group. And I'm wondering that how a terrorist group that all international communities were fighting them once, now they have become like a legitimate, not legitimate in my eyes, but legitimate the way they are introducing themselves. And that should not be acceptable. And that may create a path for other terrorist groups like Boko Haram or someone else. And they might think that with terror, with attacks, with suicides, they may run a government once, you see? And that was not a good example for other terrorist groups as well.
No, I agree. And, you know, if you think about it, just recently, you've seen ISIS attacks inside Iran. You've seen TTP attacks against Pakistan, you know, and I think you're right. I think this is it's going to spill over. It certainly has regional implications, but, you know, anytime that violent extremism is allowed to flourish unmolested in a remote area, and they have global aspirations, I mean, it's pretty predictable on how that's going to go. Are you finding in the course of your duties, Madam Ambassador, are you finding that in Western Europe, for example, or in Europe, are people listening? Are people listening to what you have to say, or is it a fairly difficult lift to get the message out there? I can't imagine. I would imagine it is, but what's a day in the life like for you trying to get people to pay attention to this?
The experiences I have in my capacity as Afghanistan's representative in Austria shows me that people listen. People enthusiastically listen to me. And actually, I'm very grateful that I'm based in Vienna, like a place, a hub of democracy and dialogue, and people are very open to listen to you. So then I believe that, yeah, many people, including individuals, they listen to you, they have sympathies with you. But, you know, just listening and showing sympathies and empathies are not enough for us. We need actions. And without actions, we cannot change the circumstances. And I know that when I'm talking about the situation of Afghanistan, when I'm talking about women's about the atrocities the Taliban are implementing against women. So many people are like, yeah, we know, we understand you, we are with you, but what can we do? So what is the solution? Because right now the world does not have an appetite to go back to Afghanistan. We will not send a force there. So might the change comes within the country? Might you just lobby for the change inside the country and you concentrate on your local forces? I agree with them. Indeed, I agree. But at the same time, the Afghanistan situation is very complex because for the past 30 years, several proxy war have been going on in Afghanistan. So it doesn't have only a national implication. It has several regional and international implications. So if we want to address the situation, we need to collect all those elements together and tackle the situation. That is the thing. So what is the solution? Indeed, I don't have a concrete answer for that, but at least we shouldn't stop. We should continue to lobby for human rights and women's rights, and we should tell the people what is going on in Afghanistan. And maybe in a couple of years, we change the content of policymakers. But honestly, my experience in Austria is great. As I said, that I'm very active in the Organization of Security and Cooperation of Europe, and almost every month I have a speech there, and the representative of several countries, they are listening to me and they are interested on what I'm saying. So that is my own experiences, and but I mean, like, that's not enough. We need actions. We need some major steps to do or to bring some changes in the country.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. I don't necessarily know the answer either. However, I do think there are some solution steps here. And one of them, I don't know, I've only got a couple questions left for you. I know you're very busy, Madam Ambassador, but one of the questions I really do feel like I need to ask you is, you know, I do several interviews with different constituents who are involved in trying to help Afghanistan get to better days. And one of them is, I've interviewed, of course, legend, but I've also interviewed Commander Massoud from the National Resistance Front, and as well as Ali Nazri and others, and we've built, you know, a pretty strong rapport around. But I've also interviewed General Sadat and others who, what they share in common is a desire for Afghanistan to resist. And I guess that's what I would like to ask you about is, what is your perspective on the resistance in Afghanistan? What do we need to know about it, and what needs to happen? Because it seems to me that no matter what the solution is internationally, that a coherent, effective, collective resistance in Afghanistan, because the people that I've talked to in the resistance, they're not asking for US boots on the ground. They're not. They're willing to carry the load, and they are actively right now as you and I speak. They're fighting and they're carrying the load. But I feel like a lot of people don't know this. They don't understand this. And so I guess my question to you is, if you can talk about it, is what is your perspective on resistance in Afghanistan, and what needs to happen?
So resistance is a must in Afghanistan. The NRF, or the National Resistance Front, stands out as the initial group, and they bravely opposed the Taliban, with many of its members making the ultimate prize by giving their lives in the fight against the Taliban. And I have great respect to Mr. Ahmad Massoud, because he was the very first person to build resistance in Afghanistan. And my respect always be there for him, for his braveness and for his courage. and he is one of the youngest, leader of the country. And this resilience demonstrates that the people of Afghanistan refuse to remain silent in the face of opposition. And it's crucial to note that the NRF is not alone and not standing alone, and there are several other groups, including the Freedom Front. Different groups have emerged, and they are proving to be highly effective in recent months. And yeah, many nations and many politicians, they know about the resistance in Afghanistan, but they just want to minimize the resistance in Afghanistan, and they want to just ignore that there is a resistance in Afghanistan. And even the Taliban are fighting and killing those who are having a relation with the resistance. But when you're making an interview with them, they are just hiding the fact that there is a resistance in Afghanistan, and they are saying that we have 100% control of the country and there is no resistance. But I believe there is resistance. There are several forms of resistance in Afghanistan: political resistance, armed resistance, civil resistance, women's resistance. And actually what I'm doing is a resistance, and I called with proud myself as a member of resistance because I'm standing against them. So there are several formats of resistance in the country, but yeah, you pointed out a very important thing, that we need to mobilize all these forces together, because right now you see a disfragmentation among the powers or political parties who are opposing the Taliban. We need to have like a network for that, to create a big hub for all those powers and resistance forces and political leaders, young generations, including brave Afghan girls who are every day shouting for their rights on the streets. Actually, that is what we are lacking right now, but we are working on that. You might have heard about Vienna Conference. Actually, we have created the Vienna process for Afghanistan for the past 2 years, and we have already conducted 3 rounds of the Vienna Conference, and we have gathered different politicians, members of civil society, members of medias, and member of NRF and other groups to come together and sit around one table and discuss the future of Afghanistan and discuss how they can put their forces together. And another thing, I believe that it's very important that I echo in this podcast, that it's I believe that it's important to emphasize that the primary goal is not to promote war within the country. We are not promoting war in the country. We want peace, and our focus is on seeking peace and reconciliation. However, a key point to underscore is that if the Taliban are unwilling to agree to the terms that lead to peace and inclusivity, what shall we do? What are our options? Because for the past 2 years and a half, a big group of our politicians, a big group of our civil society members are opposing the Taliban peacefully. Our girls on the street demonstrating peacefully. We are trying to make conversation. We are trying to make self-reflect, and at the same time, we are trying to build groups of different layer of the society to come together and to discuss the situation of Afghanistan. But right, unfortunately, Taliban are unwilling to come together and sit with us and to talk, because they believe that they have gotten the power, and right now they have everything, and why they should share the power. And I think their argument is very naive, because that is not the question of gaining power. It's the question of running the country. And if they or anyone else do not have the intellectual capacity to run a country and to be a member of United Nations, be a useful member of this world, so how they can hold the government, how they can govern the country. So that is the question. So I emphasize that we do not war, we do not promote the war, but if there is no option, I mean, like, we should have the option of war remains on the table.
Yes.
And this stance reflects the commitment to finding a peaceful resolution while being prepared to defend against any threats to the well-being and rights of our people. And I think we have this right to to establish a self-defense mechanism. What is our self-defense mechanism? We do not have any. One is conversation and peace talks. We are ready to that. If not, so then what should we do? We just should sit and see how we lose generations of people and how we lose our country. That is my points of view.
Yeah, no, it's really well said. And I think for the American point of view and the Western point of view, what I say to people is, if we don't responsibly get involved with this in a way that's appropriate, we're going to end up in a situation where we are responding to a violent terror attack here in the United States or somewhere in the West with a high degree of emotion and anger and retribution, and that's going to be just bad for everybody, because it's just going to be kind of a repeat of that part. And it doesn't have to be that way. There is a way to I believe support the resistance responsibly and play a position in the world to assist leaders like you who are resisting along all lines. And you're great. That's great that you call that out. And I really appreciate it, because a lot of people, particularly veterans, they think resistance is just armed resistance. And that's part of it at times. But in this case, the political resistance, the civil society resistance, the way that young girls are advocating for just their rights through very brave protests, continuing to go to school, like, it's amazing. But there's going to have to be some support from the rest of the world to assist with this. I think it's just to ask the Afghan people to carry this load on their own is really heavy. So with that in mind, what message have we not conveyed to the rest of the world that you would like to convey on this podcast, that if someone watching or listening, what have we not said that really needs to be said?
So there are many things, but let me start from this point that this resistance forces and different format of resistance, as you said, we have the loads and we carry out these loads, and we do not want international community to help us with that, but we need political support. Because, like right now, the conversation of Afghanistan is kind of dying down. And whenever we want to try to make a conversation, I personally feel pressures on my shoulder whenever we want to say something. And we see that many powers in the world, they do not have willingness to listen to us. Listen to us and understand us. That is one message that we need to deliver to the world. And the world should understand the diverse nature of Afghanistan, which encompasses various ethnic groups, ideologies, and mindsets. I want to emphasize the importance of approaching the situation with a nuanced understanding that acknowledges the differences within the country. We are not like one ethnic group with one mindset. We have very different mindsets in the country. Like for myself, for generation, we have had educated women in our families, and until I was 18 years old, no, 20 years old, I have never had like a hijab or whatsoever. And all the people around me were like just the same, like my family, educated, modern, and people from the city. And now everything has been changed. So I mean, like when foreigners approach Afghans, they should know the diversity of Afghanistan. And additionally, I would like to highlight the complexity of public sentiment. While there are millions who do not support the Taliban, fear often hinders them from expressing their disagreements openly. There are so many families that I'm in contact in Afghanistan. They want to leave the country. They do not want to stay under the Taliban rule, but they are calm and silent. They cannot do anything because they do not have any leverage, and they cannot stand the Taliban empty hands, because they are empty hands, and the Taliban have every means of terror and weapons on their hands. So another thing, actually, I already mentioned that, but let me just emphasize once again that it's essential to recall the universality of the Human Rights Declaration and recognize its applicability everywhere. Serving as a reminder of our shared commitment to fundamental values. If we believe in human rights, then human rights should be applicable everywhere in this world. And these are my main messages to the world. And right now, I think that was all I said.
That's okay, but those are great. And I have a feeling you and I will talk again, and we'll have continue to find opportunities for you to put your message out to the world, because that's my commitment, is to continue to try to fight for a platform for you and the other leaders that are doing this. How can people support you and your mission who are watching this?
To not recognize the Taliban as the governments and as the nations, because that is the very step for us. If international community recognize the Taliban, so then we would lose all our platforms. Right now, I have a platform in Vienna, but whenever Austria or other EU members recognize the Taliban as a legitimate government in Afghanistan, then immediately I will lose my platform, and my other ambassador fellows lose their platforms. And I don't want that happens. That is the very first thing. And the second thing, by listening to us, by cooperating with us, and by giving us solutions, by brainstorming what we can do together to change the situation in Afghanistan. These are the, I believe that the main message that we can deliver.
Perfect. Yes. Well, Madam Ambassador, we're right at the hour now, and I would like to just wrap up by saying thank you for taking the time. I know you're extremely busy, and there are, I'm sure, so many veterans and military family members from the United States, from NATO, listening to this, who are deeply appreciative of you and what you're doing. And we have a lot of respect for you. We have a lot of respect for you, because you're standing up against something that really needs to be stood up against. And so grateful for you doing that, and just a lot of admiration. And one of the things that I always tell people who don't have a lot of experience with Afghanistan, or they make some comment about what they're seeing on the news and how it's kind of over. And the thing that I always say, and I hear a lot of other veterans say, is don't count the Afghan people out. You know, the biggest mistake in the world you can make is to count the Afghan people out. And I believe that that chapter has not been written. I believe it will be written, and I believe there are better days ahead. And with leaders like you leading the charge, I know there will be. So we're always here if you need us. We're very, very grateful to you, and I'll give you the last word.
Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate your great work. And actually, I listened to your testimony in the parliament just the other day, and I watched one of your show. And the work you're doing is great, meaningful, and significant in United States and for the people of Afghanistan. And I'm sure and I hope that you continue this great job to shed lights over the situation of Afghanistan and to tell the people the truth about the country, because right now it's a world of different kind of propagandas and fake news and all those stuff. And you portray the right picture of Afghanistan, and thank you so much for that.
Well, it's my honor, and I hope to meet you in person one day. I hope to get over to Austria and meet you. And then, you know, my ultimate dream is to take my wife and kids to Afghanistan one day and let them see that beautiful country for themselves. So,
thank you. Hopefully, that day I will be in Afghanistan and host you there.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds fantastic. Thanks to everybody for listening and watching the Rooftop Podcast. If you get a chance, you know, share this with folks that could benefit from it. If you'd like to leave a review or a rating, you know, we'd appreciate that. In the meantime, remember that fear is contagious, but leadership's a lot more contagious. Thanks for what you do, and I'll see you on the rooftop.